Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. In this video, we will work together on Grammar Handout, which is about noun clauses. We will look at 3 different kinds of noun clauses, all used in the object position. This video will be in 2 parts, so don't forget to watch the second part. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start with a simple question. What is a noun clause? Well, let's see a very simple sentence. I know relative clauses, but I don't know noun clauses. Well, this sentence is easy to understand, and you are a pre-intermediate student, so you know that I is the subject, know is the verb, relative clauses is the object, and then we have a second clause, I is the subject, don't know is the verb, noun clauses is the object. Good, easy. Now let's look at a more complicated sentence. We think that pre-intermediate students should learn noun clauses. Okay, this is long and it looks difficult, but it's actually very simple. The subject is we, think is the verb. Now, which is the object of the sentence? Well, the object of the sentence is all of this, that PIN students should learn noun clauses. This is the object of think. And this is a noun clause. Now, what is a noun clause? Inside a noun clause, we have a sentence. The sentence is, PIN students should learn noun clauses. This is a sentence. And we use this sentence inside another sentence. And to do that, we use a noun clause. So this noun clause is a clause that is the object of the sentence. Okay, now look at the grammar handout on page 1. You have task 1 and task 2. Stop the video, do the exercise, and when you finish, press play. Okay, now task 1. It says, study the sentences and circle the main verb and then underline the object in each sentence. Let's have a look at A. The birth rate is the subject, affects is the verb, the government policies is the object. That's very easy. Let's look at the next sentence. Most governments cannot solve, that's the verb, the problem of low birth rate. That is the object. Again, very simple. Now let's look at the next one. The verb is believe, and then we have that low birth rate is a serious problem for countries. That is the object. And in D, the verb is has shown, and the object is that Germany has the highest percentage of childless women in the world. Okay, so what is the difference between the objects of sentences A and B and C and D? Well, the difference is, in sentences A and B, the objects are noun phrases. In sentences C and D, the objects are instead noun clauses, because they are a sentence with that at the beginning. Okay, now let's look at the handout and let's look at task 3 on page 1. Now stop the video, read the text, do task 3. When you finish, you can press play. Okay, let's have a look together. In this text, there are 5 noun clauses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what is interesting about these noun clauses? Let's look at the first one. The verb before the noun clause is have shown. So new figures is the subject, have shown is the verb, and the next is the object, which is the noun clause. Let's look at the next one. Is, that's a verb. Let's look at the next one. Is, again, that's a verb. The fourth one, says, okay. Now there is something special about the last one. In the last one, we have sure. Sure is not a verb, it's an adjective. We will see why very soon. Okay, so let's have a look together. Noun clauses function as nouns in the sentence. Now this is interesting. They can be the object or the subject of a sentence. For example, new figures have shown that Germany has the highest percentage of childless women in the world. Again, this is easy. The subject is new figures. The verb is have shown. The object is the noun clause. Now, Noun clauses can also be the subject of a sentence. Now don't worry, in this video we're only focusing on noun clauses as objects of sentences, but still it's interesting to know. For example, that Africa has the highest birth rate in the world is a well-known fact. I'll repeat it. That Africa has the highest birth rate in the world is a well-known fact. Now in this sentence, the subject is the noun clause. That Africa has the highest birth rate in the world is the subject. The verb is, and a well-known fact is the object. So in this case, the noun clause is the subject of the sentence. Okay, let's continue on the handout. On the handout, this section is very useful. It says, you can use that clauses after certain verbs. Now, of course, you can use that noun clauses after many verbs, but these are the most commonly used verbs before noun clauses. Know, think, believe, agree, claim, show, answer, realize, state, conclude, suggest, and say. Now, these verbs are commonly used with noun clauses, but that does not mean that we only use these verbs. We can use many verbs with noun clauses. Another interesting thing is we can actually use adjectives before noun clauses. For example, afraid, surprised, happy, sure, evident, certain, essential, important, and necessary. Now this is very interesting. For example, let's look at the second example because that's a very good example. Some men are unhappy that they will have to take care of their children. In this case, that they will have to take care of their children is the noun clause, and we have the noun clause after the adjective unhappy. You can also use noun clauses after the verb to be. And these are very, very useful when you're doing writing. So when you're writing a paragraph, if you need to write a reason, an advantage, a difficulty, a cause, a rule, a problem, then it's very useful to use noun clauses. For example, one reason is that working mothers cannot find anyone to look after their children. Stop the video and try writing some examples with these verbs and adjectives. It's very, very important to get used to writing noun clauses so you can write better and you can also use them in reading and listening. Okay, so I decided to write some examples for you. For example, I think that noun clauses are easy to understand. And I really believe this. Relative clauses can be difficult, but noun clauses are actually quite easy. Let's look at a good example for writing paragraphs. One advantage of online education is that you can study at any time of the day, and that's a noun clause. Now, a very common noun clause that I'm sure you have used, at least I hope. Let's look at this sentence. I'm sorry that I'm late. Now this is very important. If you're late for class, you should always say, I'm sorry that I'm late. Now in this case, sorry is an adjective, that I'm late is the noun clause. However, normally we say, I'm sorry I'm late. Now this is very interesting because there is no that. Now what has happened here? That can be omitted when it is used in a noun clause as the object of the verb. Now in this case, it's not even a verb, it's an adjective, but it's very common to say, I'm sorry I'm late. We don't use that. Now let's look at these two examples. New figures, that's the subject. Have shown, that's the verb. That Germany has the highest percentage of childless women in the world, that is the object. In this case, we can omit that and we can say, new figures have shown Germany has the highest percentage of childless women in the world. That is fine. Now let's look at the next sentence. The minister is the subject, says is the verb, that they are planning to collect less tax from the families with children. That is the noun clause. Now again, in this case, we can omit that. We can say, the minister says they are planning to collect less tax from the families with children. So please remember, using that is not always necessary. Okay, now one more important thing. After prepositions, you need to use the fact that. We don't use that after prepositions. For example, Some men are unhappy about the fact that they will have to take care of their children. Now, about is a preposition, so after a preposition, we normally use the fact that. You can also use the adjective unhappy and write that. The important thing to remember is this: if you want to use a preposition and then you want to use a noun clause, please remember to use the fact that. That's very important. Okay, now to sum up, what is a noun clause? If you want to use a sentence as an object in another sentence, noun clauses can help you do that. Okay, so a noun clause is the object of a sentence and it is also a sentence. That's why we call it a noun clause, because it's a clause which functions as an object. For example, this is a simple sentence. Learning online can make you an independent learner. I believe this. This is the second sentence. Now we can combine these two sentences. This is the object, so we can say, I believe that learning online can make you an independent learner. And this is very true. I really believe it. It is difficult to learn online, but you are responsible for what you learn, so you will become more independent. You can also use noun clauses to say things you have heard from others. I'll give you an example. You should be the change you want to see in the world. Gandhi said this. Now, this is a very beautiful sentence. You should be the change you want to see in the world. This is what Gandhi said. I can combine these two sentences with a noun clause. For example, Gandhi said that you should be the change you want to see in the world. So Gandhi is the subject, said is the verb, that you should be the change you want to see in the world is the object, and that is a noun clause. Now it's time to prove that you have understood how to use noun clauses. And, by the way, this is a noun clause. So, what do you need to do? Do exercises 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You will find them on pages 3, 4, 5 and 6 of Grammar Handout 1. You will find the answers to these exercises online. Now before you start, try answering this question. Which of these sentences contains a noun clause and which contains a relative clause? I truly believe that practice makes perfect. Students that practice a lot can improve all their language skills. Now, which one is the noun clause and which one is the relative clause? Well, it's easy. The first one is the noun clause. The second one is the relative clause. Now, why? Because believe is a verb, and after a verb, we need an object. So normally, after a verb, if you have that, that means it's a noun clause. Instead, the second one is a relative clause. Why? Because students is a noun, and so after a noun, you will have a relative clause if you see that. So, that's the end of part 1. I hope the video was useful for you.